Hey everyone, I'm Rachel, and I'm here to tell you about my favoriteest book ever, and let you know how amazing it is. Yeah. I started the school in 8th grade, so I've had 5 years of the humanities program. And I know what you're thinking. What is your favorite book from those 5 long, stressful, vigorous years? I'm so glad you asked. My favorite book, and also probably one of my most favorite movies, is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. In fact, I've actually loved every book that I've read by her. It's only been 2. I've only read 2. But I would like to read more of her books. But
ain't nobody got time for that.
Pride and Prejudice is about the Bennet family. So Mr. and Mrs. Bennet have 5 daughters. The Bennet family has 5 daughters, and Mrs. Bennet really wants to marry off all of them, because if she doesn't, and if Mr. Bennet dies, then that means all of their money and possessions and land and everything goes to the cousin, Mr. Collins.
What excellent boiled potatoes.
Now enter Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy, the 2 super wealthy and super handsome guys in the story. So now we get to see not only the worldview of the Bennet family, who are poor, but we also get to see Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy's worldviews, and they're pretty high up in society. The 2 guys hold a ball, and the entire Bennet family attends. Jane, the oldest sister, takes a liking to Mr. Bingley, who also takes a liking to her, and Mr. Darcy is super rude to Elizabeth, the second oldest. Before you know it, Jane gets sick while at the Bingley's house, and she has to stay there for a couple days. Lizzie comes over to help out, but she and Mr. Darcy don't get along too well. But oh no! Mr. Bingley breaks up with Jane because Mr. Darcy thinks she's not good enough for him. Meanwhile, he falls in love with Lizzie, and before you know it...
I don't understand.
I love you.
From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others, made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
But of course, not before she already rejects Mr. Collins's proposal of marriage. So to make matters worse, Lydia, the youngest of the Bennet sisters, runs off with soldier boy Mr. Wickham, and they scandalously elope. Which makes Lizzie super mad because Mr. Wickham used to like her. Then Mr. Darcy writes a letter to Lizzie telling her how horrible of a man Mr. Wickham is, which puts the Bennet family into a bunch of trouble because now Lydia just eloped with this guy. But then Mr. Darcy saves the day. He pays off Mr. Wickham so that the Bennet family honor can be restored. And then Jane and Mr. Bingley are finally reunited, and Mr. Darcy eventually wins over Lizzie with his gentleman-like charm and his mansion-esque house. And everyone lives happily ever after! So there you have it, Pride and Prejudice. Now you may be wondering, why would I even want to read this book? Because there are so many universal themes in it, like love, marriage, wealth, society and class, women and femininity, family, deceit, principles, and, of course, Pride and Prejudice. These last 2 are actually my favorite themes in the book because they show that everybody is prideful, and Darcy and Elizabeth have to humble themselves before they can appreciate each other, and before they fall in love. Also, prejudice is seen as a worse sin than pride in this book. It really just goes to show that no matter how much wealth you have, no matter what your rank is in society, it doesn't really matter. If you're prejudiced, then it just makes your character ugly and completely unattractive. That's why you should read Pride and Prejudice. Plus, you feel like 10 times more sophisticated after you read this thing. Like, you're basically British now. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Now go out and have a wonderful day. Or night.